Thank you everyone for joining us for this 11th event. We're almost done of the 12th event Encode Filecoin Club series, in which we teach you all about Filecoin Protocol Labs, all of the various affiliated companies, networks, and protocols and tooling within the broader Filecoin ecosystem. All the events, we've done, I say, 10 so far before this. They're all on this link here. All the videos, all the slides are made available in perpetuity for you and your learning. And this overall series is one of three parts. This is part one, education. We go into a hackathon, which will be announced very soon in time for next week's event. And after that, an accelerator for the best startups or the best hackathon projects to try and become startups. If you do want to kind of ask any questions in general, get involved in the Encode Club community, our Discord is here for your enjoyment. And I should flag that the last event is next week, next Tuesday, the 21st of September, which is on mining and how that works. But let's stick to the present, and we're very pleased to have Carson Farmer, who is an engineer at Textile and helps, would I be right in saying you mainly focus on the R&D side, Carson?
Yeah, that's pretty good summary. Yep.
Good.
When you're in a small,
I saw both in various places,
yeah.
And is also formerly an assistant professor at the University of Colorado. He's going to tell us everything about Textile. If you have any questions, chat is there. We prefer chat. If you do want to ask anything face to face, please keep to the end, just for the speed of movement through the event. And if anyone has any general questions, feel free to private message me on Zoom or find me on the Discord. In the meantime, Carson, thank you for being here this morning. And over to you, and looking forward to this one greatly.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot. So good afternoon or morning or whatever the case may be from where you are. Is everybody looking at my big blue animated slide right now?
Looks good.
Cool. All right. I will take it from there. So yeah, I'm Carson from Textile. Probably one of the better introductions I've had in a while. So thank you for that. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about storing data on Filecoin with Textile. And so to start off, I'll talk a bit about that last bit about the with Textile part, because that's who I'm here with. So Textile has a sort of mission-driven, all startups kind of say that, but our mission is to accelerate the exchange of information across society. And that our hypothesis is that keeping humanity's data safe means creating systems that promote that exchange of data and information across borders and through time. And so that through time bit is kind of important here today, I think, which is a lot about just safeguarding long-term storage and of data. And so we're kind of doubling down on Filecoin as a nice means to safeguard humanity's data. And so right now we're pretty committed to getting as many bytes as possible on the Filecoin network, because we think this is the most direct path to enabling everybody, individuals, organizations, communities, to own, control, and preserve their data for the long term. And so that's kind of why I think I'm here today, is to talk a little bit about how we approach that goal or that mission of ours, and then all of the technologies that you can use that come out of that to get bytes on Filecoin. And so the way we approach building tools and our development sort of flow is that we build products as experiments to test assumptions about Filecoin, to test assumptions about other protocols, other networks, and the users that are actually engaging with the data. And so you might have heard Textile referred to as like a research lab or a product lab or both. And we kind of, think of products as projects and projects as products. And that's how we do our development. And so we do this out in the open whenever possible. And we use each product, and I'm going to talk about a couple today, to gather new data and then leapfrog our previous products to figure out better ways of leveraging Filecoin. And so, like I said, we use a sort of hypothesis-driven approach to product development. And today I'm going to highlight a few of the hypotheses that we have around getting data on Filecoin. And I'm going to try and put these hypotheses in the context of the projects or the products that we're testing these hypotheses with. I'm going to try not to say hypotheses so many times because it's a hard one. But anyway, each of these products I'm going to talk about, they're at different stages of sort of the product development cycle. So some already have like a pretty vibrant community around them. Others are just getting off the ground. And then I'm going to focus specifically on the sort of last two, which I'll get to in a second here, because they, I think, are the most relevant for this particular this particular program and for the students and everybody involved. So yes, hypothesis driven development. So many of you, or some of you, might be familiar with Textile's buckets APIs and things. So this was based on the idea that combining sort of abstractions for data mutability on top of IPFS with a component of sort of remote persistence or archiving would help developers more quickly integrate IPFS and Filecoin into their existing stack. And so the idea was, people work with mutable data. Can we come up with sort of APIs and abstractions that make them not have to rethink too much how they develop things in order to bootstrap integration of IPFS and other Web3 tools into their workflow? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did there and if we think that hypothesis played out in a second. So then the other hypothesis was that is based around a product we call Powergate. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the idea here was creating easier onboarding for early Filecoin adopters would increase total adoption over the long term. And this was really about building developer tooling to make it easier to deploy a Filecoin ready stack. So like you've got some, web development organization, you're building web apps. How easy can we make it to deploy a Filecoin driven stack on your existing infrastructure with all the tools that you're already familiar with, like Docker and AWS deployment tools and things like that? How easy can we make that to get more people getting in early before Filecoin was really necessarily ready for that level of production use? Another one, and more recent one, is that we've started to sort of evaluate how we might be able to rethink some of the economics around Filecoin. And here, this one here is, by tightly coupling Filecoin economics with the deal-making process, we can generate a cheaper, more efficient storage pipeline for users. And I'm pretty excited about this one, so I'm going to spend slightly more time talking about auctions, because it's a sort of like different take on deal-making on Filecoin. And so since I know you've been talking about deal making, or you will be soon, I think this would be a relevant topic to chat about. And then last but not least, and the thing I'm going to spend the most time talking about today, is this last one about bridges. Building bridges is a pretty important thing in the sort of like blockchain Web3 space. And so our hypothesis here is connecting Filecoin to other layer 1 or even layer 2 blockchains through bridges will enable entirely new products and interactions to be built. So imagine, third-party APIs where you don't need any API keys, and like truly user scoped data workflows and things like that. And so, these are kind of exciting things that I think we can get into a little bit while we're here. So as I said, today I'm going to focus on these last two ways to get data onto the Filecoin network, through auctions and bridges. And that's really the topic of discussion today, is getting data on Filecoin with Textile. But we couldn't do any of this stuff without a lot of collaboration. And one of the reasons I like to be in this space is that it's still early enough days that there's a very strong mentality of, tides rise all boats, and everybody's kind of very collaborative and just wants this whole crazy decentralized storage experiment to work. So I did want to acknowledge the fact that we work with a lot of really amazing people. Obviously Protocol Labs and the Filecoin team, and the ARG team as well, which I know Jimmy gave a talk earlier. So these have all been really great folks to work with. And some of them are newer to us, and some of them we've been working with for years. So, just go click on all their websites and do me a favor and say hi. Okay, so let's talk about some of these sort of product hypotheses and how we might go about them. And I'm going to talk about a couple of specific Filecoin ones, but we do build sort of less Filecoin based stuff. So if you really care about that stuff, you can check out our documentation online, docs.textile.io. And I will make sure that these slides which are all markdown based, are available after the session, and I'll have a PDF version and all that stuff as well for folks who want to review them. And it looks like this is being recorded too, so that's good. Okay, so actually, before I move on, I'm going to take a quick pause and look at the chat here in case there's anybody any questions I can answer. Cool. To what extent does Filecoin rely on the normal storage providers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, etc.? Or rather, if they went down, what would happen to Filecoin? Well, a lot of the Filecoin miners are running like bare metal stacks. So actually, if like AWS or Azure went down, probably Filecoin would still be going. But I think if AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud all went down at the same time, there'd be a lot of other problems on the internet. So that might bubble up. But in theory, a lot of Filecoin miners are running bare metal, so they actually would be unaffected by that. A lot of people deploy IPFS things to cloud services, but Filecoin, I think the backbone is pretty separate. Oh, someone already answered that. Is Textile a protocol or a private company? So Textile is a VC funded and a private company with funding, as well as all sorts of like funded projects and grant-based projects. And we were early sort of incomers to the Filecoin community, so we've been around for a while. And that's the answer to that question. So we don't have a token, for instance, if that's what you're wondering about. Anyway, okay. So what does Textile actually build? We maintain a suite of libraries and tools that make it easier and faster to adopt IPFS and Filecoin, or at least for the purposes of today's talk, that's what we do. And so I'm going to look at a couple of these in the next couple of slides. But again, since the topic of today's session is all about getting data on Filecoin with Textile, we're going to focus specifically on those ones. And as I said, if you're interested in the other products, check it out. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is buckets. Maybe some of you have heard of this. If you're familiar with cloud storage, you might find buckets kind of easy to interact with or understand. They're sort of a like blob store, like AWS style bucket storage. But unlike those traditional storage services, buckets are built on top of decentralized protocols like IPFS and libp2p, and one of our protocols called Threads. And I just saw a question pop up about how much does Textile cost. Textile doesn't really cost anything. We do have hosted services, so you can pay for like hosted storage and things like that, but all of our tools and things are open source. And so Textile, the company, is sort of a separate thing from Textile, the tools, which are all open source and free to use. So buckets provides this sort of like object storage for synchronizing between different users or instances and sharing and accessing data over IPFS and Filecoin. And so with buckets, you can do things like we do have hosted services. You can explore basically mutable data over like dashboards or websites. You can render web content. So a lot of people deploy static sites to a bucket. And then they can update that over time, and the bucket will reflect the latest state of the website. You also get a bunch of like sort of freebies with buckets. So, you know, it automatically does IPFS and IPNS updates. If you're familiar with IPFS tooling, you can collaborate over a bucket. So you can create users and organizations. You can have private buckets with encrypted data. So it's really great for if you're using like user sort of storage spaces or things like that. And then the cool thing, of course, and why it's relevant for today, is that you can archive bucket data to Filecoin. So basically you get this sort of like bucket that you can chuck data in and mutate it over time. And then at some later date, you can say, you know what, the state that it's in right now, I want that archived for a year. And so you can archive that to Filecoin, and you can ensure the sort of like long-term security. So your users might have encrypted data and they want to archive that to Filecoin. So that's a pretty cool feature. And one of the nice things about buckets is, you know, you get this sort of like mutable bucket of of data, space or storage that you just put data in, and then you can archive it later. If you're at all interested in learning more about buckets, and I'm not going to dwell on it too much today, there's a video there that you can access through these slides later. And it's from a different Filecoin based session where our CEO, Andrew, gives a great overview of what buckets are for and what they do. So next thing is Powergate. So I was mentioning archiving with buckets. This is actually achieved using Powergate. And so Powergate is pretty much just, what it says on the box here. It's a production-ready Filecoin deployment stack. And so really what that means is it's a collection of like software libraries, modules, and config options that you can use to set up and integrate your own Filecoin backend, or sorry, your own Filecoin system on a backend or application or storage system. And so, if you were at all curious about running your own Lotus node to interact with Filecoin, or you're looking to like bridge data across IPFS and Filecoin yourself, Powergate is designed for that. So that would be a good choice for someone who's kind of interested in that space. As I said, it is pretty much production ready. We use it in our own hub system for our archiving buckets. And it was built originally as part of our hypothesis that sort of like early developer tools for Filecoin would accelerate adoption. So, and in fact, it did. It made it easier for us to offer Filecoin archiving for buckets. It can handle 1 to thousands of Filecoin wallets, so it's pretty scalable. It allows developers to manage a bunch of like sort of different deal pipelines. So you can have like manage a bunch of different sub wallets, each one firing off deals and things with Filecoin. And then some of the most useful things are that it sort of like abstracts over a lot of the like Lotus APIs. So for instance, you create a config file and push this to Powergate that says like, okay, I want this stored with a replication factor of 3. And I want you to like repair the deals if they ever like don't go through or the minor faults or whatever. So you can kind of like set and forget storage, and Powergate will manage the maintenance of those storage deals, and like it'll even create new deals if it has to. And then there's a bunch of nice things like it integrates the IPFS pinning API. It has tools for like ingesting data. So if you just got like a folder of NFT images, you can use Powergate to basically ingest those files and put them into a format that you can use in Filecoin deals and things like that. So this is basically just a suite of tools to smooth over some of the earlier rough edges of Filecoin. And so it's been quite a lot of fun for us. Talked about a bunch of these things. What else can you do? You can do things like, check that data is indeed available on both IPFS and Filecoin. Long-term storage management, so like deal renewal, as I mentioned. And then it also bundles in some things like network indices, like miner indexes, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So it can help with miner selection, all sorts of fun stuff. One of the most useful things maybe for the crowd here. Oh yeah, here we go. So someone's already asking about LocalNet. So yeah, one of the most useful things about for the crowd here is Powergate does come with something we call LocalNet, which is pretty much a full-featured Filecoin network that you can run locally. It's like a Dockerized miners basically that automatically will mine at a faster rate. So you can sort of like for hackathons, this is really nice because you can test an app against a real Filecoin network. And so that's pretty killer. We've seen some people sort of build proof of concepts this way pretty quickly. And there's a question about what is the minimal test of LocalNet using the Powergate CLI. I'm not the right person to ask about that. If you want to jump on our Slack for that, that's probably the best way to do it. And you can ask over there, but there's plenty of folks who can help with that. Again, I've got a video here for anybody who's interested. This is a pretty good overview of like the CLI and LocalNet and all the fun things that you can do there. So I recommend you check that out. And then, yeah, there's plenty of support if you want to do more stuff with Powergate. Cool. All right. Next hypotheses or hypothesis. This is based on this idea of auctions. And so this is more recent work. We've sort of like fast forwarded quite a bit in terms of what Textile has been starting to do more recently. And this is the Filecoin deal auctions. So, like it says there, it's sort of a different take on how you might interface with miners to get data on Filecoin. So here we're talking about an open deal marketplace where miners actually bid on storage requests in real time. And I'll try to go through that to kind of explain what that means, because it's a slightly different take on how Filecoin works, using Filecoin the way it's meant to, but sort of this is almost like a layer on top. So as I said, auctions are this open deal marketplace. Basically, it brings miners and data producers together over an auction to help try and move high throughput streams of data out to Filecoin miners or directly to Filecoin miners. And I guess we call miners data storage providers now. So streams of data to data storage providers. And so at the heart of this whole thing is sort of like a new model for storage auctions where miners compete to store the deal feed from an auctioneer who's managing the auctions to try and sort of make sure we keep prices low and throughput high. And I'll talk about how that works in a second. But basically imagine this like any real world auction where you've got an auctioneer that's talking really fast and hey, the data's going on, and it's like that. We watch it on the CLI and it feels like you're watching a live auction. And then you have data producers sending data feeds of storage deals, and you have miners on the other end watching that feed, watching the auction and making bids. And it's all automated and extremely exciting. And I probably should have included a slide with just like a live feed because it's pretty sweet. But anyway, to give you a better idea of what's going on here, this is pretty cool. So we'll go through the sort of like auction flow at a conceptual level. So basically the auction starts when a storage user, right, this is like a data producer of some kind, packs up their data into like a car file or a large stream of data, and they put their storage deals up for bid by sending the storage deal information to an auctioneer. And these auctioneers, we're running one right now, but they can be totally decentralized. They're not reliant on Textile per se. The auctioneer then kicks off an auction, and the storage providers, so the miners, who are listening to the live libp2p pub/sub channel for bids, will then view those bids and bid on them in real time for basically the right to fulfill that user's storage request. So basically the user creates a deal and says, hey, I got some data. Do you want to store this? And the miners all kind of inspect it, see if it matches the sort of like parameters that they're interested in storing, and we'll send a bid. And right now, because the block reward's so high, most miners are just submitting a $0 or zero fill bid. So then we need to sort of like, the auctioneer needs to evaluate who wins using slightly other sort of other parameters. And I'll talk about that in a second. But then, so a winning provider or multiple providers, if there's replication going on, are selected by the auctioneer, and then the deals are made. And the deals go right back to the source. So there's no double handling of data or anything like that. And so, from a like high level perspective, what does this look like in terms of like you and I in real life? Say you announce that you have 2 gigs you have a 2 gig file to store and you want it stored for 18 months. You tell the auctioneer that, and then 15 storage providers will basically submit bids at varying costs, but right now it's mostly zero fill, to the auctioneer to store your data. The best bid, which is based on an open algorithm that's fully auditable and everybody can inspect it, is then selected, and then the deal gets made between the data producer, you, and the miner. So basically, this is just like storage access mediated through an auctioneer. And there's a bunch of nice sort of like features that come along with this. So, like I said, this is sort of matching up storage users and providers. There's a very open source winner selection criteria, and it's based on some interesting like open auction theory. So like it's not just some crazy idea that we made up. And then for miners, a really nice thing is they can get a sort of like set and forget bid bot daemon. So they can just run a daemon that sits there and listens for bids. And if it matches their criteria, it'll automatically bid for them. So some miners have said, this is fantastic. I just set this up and run and go for coffee, and I come back and I got a bunch of deals, queued up. And so you can learn a little bit more about this. And I'm pretty, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this just because it is kind of a new take on how you can leverage Filecoin. But the best way to think about it, if you want to sort of take home idea, is auctions are like intelligent provider or miner selection tooling, where miners are selected based on their likelihood of actually accepting and completing a given storage deal. And that piece is kind of important. And you can see this is a sort of graph of the last little while of just how the storage deal thing is playing out. And what our goal here really is to get that red line, which is the daily error rate, to just like sit down at almost 0. And right now it's at about 3%. And that's really great. That basically means that what's happening is we're matching up data and miners. And so every time that a deal is made, the miner is accepting the deal and getting it on chain, 97% of the time. And that means that we've got a lot less sort of like wasted effort in terms of trying to create deals. So this is kind of like why these auctions are useful. In theory, they should lead to less complexity over time because we're using an algorithmic winner selection criteria that's open source and auditable that makes it really easy to pair up users with providers. And there's some neat things in there where, like, if you're a new provider to the system, you get a little bump in your likelihood of winning the auction just to kind of get you in there and get some reputation going. In theory, this should also keep costs down, right? Because we're actually not only sort of competing on storage price overall, but actually the miners are also competing based on sort of real-time bidding. How do you assess likelihood? Way too much of a discussion to talk about here, but you can check out a discussion on our BidBot repo, and there's a PR that just went out that updated the selection criteria algorithm. So I can put a link to that later, but I highly recommend you check that out. Yes, right. So as I said, sort of like real-time competition. So it's another layer of competition where we're actually, pitting miners against each other on a sort of in terms of costs and performance. And then in theory, and what we're seeing here, in fact, is we should get a lower error rate. And this just sort of makes sense because storage provider driven bidding basically means that the storage providers aren't just like getting requests, hey, store this data, and deciding then if they're going to store it. They're actually going, do I want to store that? Yeah, sure, cool. And then the deal goes on, and so the likelihood of storing that is much higher because they're the ones who decided they were going to do it in the first place. And so basically providers are only bidding on the pipeline of deals that they're actually like interested in storing. And so they can set up like rate limiting and things like that so that they're just keeping a nice steady flow of incoming data. And that's part of the sort of likelihood. Because they're the ones who are deciding when, it increases the likelihood that they'll take it because they're incentivized to do so. So as I said, you can really think of auctions as like miner selection tooling before it even gets to the like deal making process. And then all the deals in this case are done as offline storage deals. If you're familiar with how Filecoin works, then that will make sense. And if you're not, hopefully your next session will clear that up. Cool. All right. So now I'm at the sort of like last new topic that I want to talk about. And so when we actually originally started building out that auction system, it was actually part of a larger system for bridging data from other layer 1 blockchains to Filecoin. And we quickly realized that these were really actually two separate products and goals. One was auctions, which is this like high throughput matching up producers with miners. And then there were bridges. And bridges were really about sort of like bridging that gap between blockchains and Filecoin, other blockchains and Filecoin. And so we kind of got two products for the original price of one, so auctions and bridges. And so bridges are actually the product I want to spend sort of the rest of the session about, because I think they provide some really nice sort of on-ramps for getting data into Filecoin. from a bunch of blockchain apps and services, which are, pretty cool to think about. And so bridges are kind of shaping up to be this, relatively powerful open protocol or even concept for providing permissionless Filecoin storage to blockchain users and applications in their native token. And I've said this before in other videos. In their native token is the kind of key thing here, and this is pretty cool. So what that means is developers and their users can actually start storing data on Filecoin from just about any blockchain dApp or service that we can support without any sort of like token conversions, no signups, no developer tokens, no secrets exchange, nothing, just using Web3 native protocols and ideals. So you've got a near account and a web browser. Cool, you can store data on Filecoin. You've got a Web3 or a MetaMask plugin installed in your browser. Awesome, you can store data on Filecoin. You have like a crypto system or your assets or your private keys stored on your system locally, and you've got some backend system. Also, great way to interface via a blockchain. So you get basically like blockchain mediated access to Filecoin, and without having to do any token conversions. And this is pretty cool. So we've started building these bridges. Like I said, we're trying to build out as many different blockchains as we can to bridge to Filecoin. So this right now includes Ethereum, Polygon, and Near, with more to come. And under the hood, bridges can use auctions, and in practice, our Textile's deployed bridges do use auctions. But the idea is anybody can deploy a bridge, in fact, and then they can use any other mechanism they want to get data on Filecoin, including using, in theory, Estuary or like some other, IPFS Filecoin system. So that's pretty cool. And so bridges have turned out to be really more of like an interface for or sort of rules for engaging between blockchains and Filecoin than a specific product per se. So what that means is we can kind of create a more secure data storage layer for dApps and their users by bridging directly to Filecoin. And so the way that works is when using the bridge, or users or apps, and I'll get to that question in a second, basically you still interact with IPFS and Filecoin the way that you normally would. And so, maybe folks here who are familiar with dApp development and stuff, a lot of the time when you need to get off-chain assets on-chain, you'll use something like IPFS. You'll add that data to IPFS and then reference the hash, the CID for that thing in an on-chain event, perhaps. So you'd still do that here, except that instead of the sort of like stopping there or having to pin that data somewhere, the raw data is actually then going to be available in a storage contract created with miners on the Filecoin network. And so you can kind of like set and forget that and then recover that later even from the bridge system to get your CID back, or the data behind your CID back rather. And so the cool thing there is like the metadata for the storage, it can actually be reported back to the native blockchain as an open and reusable building block. So, you push data to Filecoin, eventually that will get on chain with all the proofs that Filecoin comes with, and then that can actually be reported back to the native chain, Ethereum or Polygon or Near. And so while we're here, there's a question about what are your views on things becoming multi-chain in the future? And our view are that that's the way things are going. We're getting so close now to basically not relying on any of the traditional sort of Web 2 ways of deploying an app. I mean, imagine we're so close to the point now where we can say you're going to deploy an Ethereum dApp. So there's your front end with all of your like user interactions and key, managing all that, no developer tokens or logins required. And then a bridge to Filecoin for all of your backend storage. Like we're so close to just having pure cloud-based or Web3 based dApps. It's like exciting. And so, what are my views is that it's happening and we're almost there already. So I'm going to go into the nitty gritty a little bit about how bridges work, because I think it's pretty cool. And if you're familiar with blockchain stuff at all, then you'll be like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. And if you're not, ask some questions. And hopefully I'll explain it well. So the core Filecoin storage bridge thing revolves around two concepts, really: deposits and storage. And so the deposit API all happens on chain. So that's just like on Ethereum or Polygon or whatever. And so that's this stuff over here. And then the storage APIs, they sort of interact off chain with like a what we call a storage validator that actually interfaces with Filecoin. And so here's the validator, and this is the sort of storage off chain stuff. Validators handle things like compiling data, putting it into batches, making deals with the Filecoin network, and then reporting deal success back to the native chain. And so you can kind of see like dApps can, request status of a particular deal. The validator can report back to their on-chain component in a sort of beautiful dance of multi-chain interactions. Along the way, the data is actually cached by the validator in a highly available IPFS layer. And that this is sitting there while this whole deal sealing process for Filecoin is underway. And then in practice, the validators will probably leave a lot of that data in the sort of like fast cache, but they might not need to. They could eventually drop that from the cache and rely purely on the Filecoin storage. So basically you get sort of like fast on-chain content addressable data right away. And then you get slower, provable, incentivized storage on Filecoin afterwards. Then the validators can do a bunch of other awesome stuff. Like they can index all of these CIDs. So you can do like a CID to deal mapping. They can do on-chain reporting. They can do all that stuff. The deposit stuff, the on-chain stuff, that's really just to provide a degree of sort of Sybil resistance right now, because we actually, thanks to Protocol Labs and Filecoin and Polygon and Near, these things are free. You can store data for free on Filecoin. It's all sort of subsidized for at least the foreseeable future, which is pretty cool because it means it's very low barrier to entry there. But you do need to leave a deposit, which is sort of like Sybil resistance. I am a real user on this blockchain, and I have some tokens here that I can prove that with. And then the validator will check to make sure that there's some funds deposited, open a storage session with the client, and then they can just start pumping data to Filecoin. Right now, I think it's about a quarter Near per 10 minutes or something like that. So it's pretty low cost. In the future, the validators, and there can be many of them, would likely take a storage fee, or sorry, a service fee. So when you deposit with them, they'll keep like some percentage, 5% of the deposit, and send the rest back. But for right now, it's free. So that's pretty fun. After the deposit expires, the user or the validator or whomever can release those funds back to the user. And then you can go along your merry way. And so that means anybody can release them. This is kind of neat because you can, once the funds are sort of like timed out, anyone can release them. So like the validator is incentivized to do that. The user is incentivized to do that. It doesn't lock up funds in the contract, which is nice. And then let's see, then the last thing is, once you do have a valid deposit, the off-chain component that the dApp is actually interacting with, so the store or status here, this is just a basic REST API. So they can send like byte streams or whatever to the off-chain validator. They can also request, status of that thing. So like, is this deal on chain yet? Are you in the middle of batching? Where's things going? And in fact, that process ranges from like batching files together to preparing the storage deal, to like sending it out to auction, to actually like deal success on the Filecoin blockchain. And so you can get that status along the way at any time. So that's pretty cool, because then clients can sit there and provide a UI or an interface to their users. One thing, we throw around, which is kind of interesting, is like, imagine you're an NFT marketplace and you allow your users to upload their NFT assets over the bridge. Then you can actually, can have icon status that says like, okay, this is like pending, storing, and then maybe like a little, like exclamation mark that shows this is secure and stored on Filecoin, and you're ready to go. So there's all sorts of interesting things. I don't want to go over too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over this stuff, but they're in the slides. So if anyone wants to look at the actual interfaces for these on-chain components, if you're like familiar with Solidity or Near development, you can check them out. And so we've got the Near and the Solidity contracts there. So I'm not going to dwell on those because, you know, there's lots more information about bridges and what you can do with them. And so, you know, if you are a smart contract developer, you can interface with the contracts on chain directly. You can listen for like on-chain events and, you know, kick off a new storage deal. You can do all sorts of pretty cool things when you start to leverage blockchain-based dApp interactions. We've also started working with the graph for indexing these contracts. So you can even sort of validate what the providers and storage bridge is saying they're doing by doing sort of third-party indexing. And then if smart contracts aren't your thing, we've got a bunch of JavaScript zero config, JavaScript APIs that are really easy to use. And I'll show you a glimpse of those later for the sort of JavaScript and TypeScript devs in the room. But basically the long story short there is like the SDKs provide a sort of like really small API surface that just integrates really nicely with like best practices for doing Ethereum and Polygon development, best practices for near development. It just works into that flow. And we spend a lot of time kind of designing around that. So you basically just import the library, lock some funds and start pushing data. But of course, you can always check out a video for this stuff to play around with it. And this is actually hot off the presses. This is ETH Online is happening like right now. So this video you can check out where Andrew and I cover a little bit about how the bridges work. So quick question check-in here. What integrations are coming next? That's a good question. Chime in on the chat. We're pretty happy with where we are on ETH, the Polygon, and Near, and we're about to do the graph integrations. So we'll get some really nice on-chain reporting. The next, and so the graph supports like EVM and Near soon to be chains for indexing. We've looked at a bunch of others. And if you're really interested to know, hit us up on our Slack or something like that. I can talk a little bit more about that. So thank you, Trudy Judy, for that. And then the next question is, do I need to know Rust to use Near? And the answer is no. In fact, Near supports assembly script, which is honestly super nice. If you know TypeScript, or even if you just know JavaScript, assembly script will feel very comfortable for you. And I'll show you what the interfaces for the contracts look like. It's pretty nice. Testing is great. Near spends a lot of time thinking about their DX, their developer experience. And in fact, in a few seconds here, I'm gonna go through. We are gonna interact with a Rust-based contract, but I'll show you that that's nothing to be worried about, because guess what? I don't know Rust at all. I'd love to learn it, but I'm not there yet. Are there any jobs at Textile? Oh, there's always jobs at Textile. I will post a link to our jobs board at the end. Yes, we're hiring big time. So speaking of code and things, I wanted to do a demo with you today, if I may. So let's try that. And then I'll also I'll show you a little bit of code and stuff at the end. So what I want to do is, I don't know how many people are familiar with Near development and the Near blockchain. So I thought it would be fun to introduce that maybe and play around with it. And what we'll do is we will build an NFT on Near. We'll do it live. And then we will upload some assets, or an asset, using the bridge. And then we will, we'll upload the asset using the bridge, and then we'll add that asset to our NFT, and we'll mint it. We'll transfer it to somebody, and that somebody is me. But anyway, here we go. So let's jump over there. So when the slides go live, this is a link, and it will take you to a little Notion document that I put together, which is a step-by-step guide to building an NFT using Near. So what I'm going to do first is bring over my terminal. All right, and I have gone through this before, so there's already a NFT ready one there, but I am going to start from scratch, and we'll do it live. And yeah, I'll share the link to Notion right now. Good question. There you go. So here we go. Here are the steps we'll use to clone, build, deploy, upload, mint, and transfer our NFT. And we'll do it live together. So Near provides some examples, and they have, just like on the Ethereum, they have standards for like how you should implement an NFT. And so this Near example here, NFT, is based on those standards. And so can everybody see my terminal here? Just a quick like thumbs up or a nod. Yep, sweet. Okay. So I'm gonna just git clone this repo. All right. And then I'm just going to CD into the NFT folder. And in here is all sorts of like, not scary, but scary Rust stuff. And we're not going to worry about that at all. We're just going to do some step-by-step stuff. Now, I've already installed Rust up and the Near command line tools. But if you haven't, you might want to do this at home, install Rust, Rust up, and the Near CLI tools. And that's what this little section here is all about. So you can do that. I'm not going to do that now because I already did it. And so you want to install the Near CLI, which is a node module. So you'll also need Node installed on your system. But with that stuff out of the way, we're going to move a little bit quickly, and I'm going to copy pasta this into my terminal. And I have not even inspected the code or anything like that. You should do that, but I'm going to build it here, and we'll let that run, and we're going to compile our contract. So we're basically building and compiling a Rust-based Near smart contract, and we're compiling it down to WASM. This exact same process can be done on Near using assembly script, and you will compile the assembly script code down to WASM. And I have done this myself, so using assembly script, so I know that it's pretty fun. So while that is sitting there going on, I'm going to copy paste to the next line. And what I'm going to do is we're compiling our contract down to WASM, and then we're just going to deploy the contract. We're going to deploy it to the Near blockchain. And we're going to do it to the Near testnet blockchain because I'm not going to waste my real Near on a demo that could go wrong. So we're going to do that. And we're going to use this handy dandy tool called Near dev deploy to just deploy this to a randomly generated contract identity. Okay, that way, like at the end of this demo, I can just forget about it and nothing, no harm, no foul. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy paste this in, and we're going to call Near dev deploy as opposed to just Near deploy. And we're going to specify the path to the WASM module that I just built, which is this non-fungible token.wasm. And here's a helper URL, which Near provides for us when we're interacting with the Near testnet, just to make things easier for us, so we don't have to run a node or anything. So I'm going to hit that. It's going to sit there and think a little bit while I sip a coffee. Hopefully my internet holds up here. And while that's going on, I will jump back over here. And what we're waiting for is like a blurb of lines of output, and then it will say something along the lines of this: done deploying to, and it'll be some like random testnet address that isn't particularly exciting. Whoop. Looks like maybe Near is having some issues. Let's try running that again. Well, that's a bummer. Near testnet is falling over on its face a little bit. Good news is this isn't my fault, and that's what's important. But we can move on because I always have a backup plan. So what would normally happen is we get a little bit of output. Oh, look at that, it's working. And we would deploy this contract, and we get an output that says, this is the contract. Yay. It also, that process creates a folder on my computer. Cool, there we go. That is a lot of output. But here is what we were looking for. Done deploying to dev, blah, blah, blah. Right, so it'll be a different one this time because it's a new random one. If I do ls here, now you'll see there's a folder called Near dev. And in that has the credentials and the keys and all the information for that randomly created account that we have. So what I can do is I can actually just source that, basically run that as a script in my bash terminal or my terminal here. And what that does is it will actually create a few new environment variables. one of which is called contract underscore name. And I can show you that the contract underscore name is dev dash blah, 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 blah. And that's just going to reduce some typing that we have to do later and make sure I don't mistype that long random name. And then what I'm going to do is I've already deployed this contract. So this contract is actually deployed to the near testnet blockchain. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to call a method on this smart contract. And so we go near call and then the contract name, because we have to tell it which contract we want to call this method on. And the standards-based method name is new default meta. So new default metadata. And the owner I'm going to set to the contract is going to be the owner of this NFT contract. And I'm going to make this call using the contract name account, the new account I just created. So basically what I'm doing is initializing the NFT contract here. So I'm going to run that call. It's going to interface with the near blockchain. And hopefully when that comes back, the near testnet is obviously struggling a little bit. We'll try to retry the request. Hopefully this will work. And if that goes through, excellent. If that goes through successfully, we could check out the transaction using the transaction explorer, or we can also just check the state for this contract. So this thing is on chain right now, and this is the state of that smart contract, the sort of like underlying storage state. So I left a bunch of stuff as defaults, including the default icon and everything. So nothing particularly interesting here, but it's using the NFT spec 1.0. The name of this non-fungible token contract is example. The symbol for it, if I wanted to have like a proper symbol and stuff, right here is example. Obviously, in real life, I would do some more interesting things. Okay, so we're gonna mint this. We're gonna mint a token for this contract in a second, but first, I want to have some artwork. I'm using the term artwork very loosely here. I'm going to have some artwork that I want to deploy or that I want to add to my minted token. This is my favorite GIF. So I'm going to push this GIF over the Filecoin bridge from near so that it will be available on Filecoin and IPFS. And I'm going to do that using, so there's a couple ways we could do that. One is I could leverage the JavaScript SDK. I could use the CLI tool that we have for doing this. I could do a bunch of custom scripts or whatever, but I actually have a live React demo app, like a really basic demo app. And so I'm just going to do that because I want to show you kind of visually how straightforward this is. So if I open this, this will just take me to our GitHub repo for this this basic demo. And this uses the JavaScript SDK for leveraging bridges. Okay, so you can explore this, check it out, check out the code if you're at all into React or JavaScript, check it out. But there's a link here to a live demo. So I'm going to click on that link and I'm going to use the near demo. And what I get is I get a little React app here. And right now I'm already logged in as nftdemo.testnet because I knew that I was going to be giving this talk later. So I'm going to just click deposit, and this will basically interact with the smart contract on chain and leave a deposit. So I'm going to click deposit. It's going to say, hey, nftdemo.testnet, do you want to leave a deposit of 25 or 0.25 near? And I'm going to say, yes, I do want to do that. Thank you for asking. Gonna let that happen again. Testnet's a bit slow today, but there we go. So now we've got some near deposited in there. Now I'm going to choose a file to upload. And in my case here, I'm going to pick this sweet GIF. Okay, I'm going to upload that. And then I'm going to click upload. And now this is leveraging the storage session that I have with the off-chain validator. The off-chain validator is going to respond with an IPFS CID. It says this data is already on IPFS, or this data is now on IPFS. Here is the hash, and I just have a lame, alert thing here. And then it just adds it to my list here. And I'm going to copy that CID, and I'm going to use that in my NFT as my NFT asset in a moment here. But while we're here, I can also click status, the status button, and this will actually hit the off-chain validator and say, what's the status of this in terms of getting it on Filecoin? And right now I just have a lame alert that says it's batching. So it's part of a large, it'll be part of a larger batch that gets pushed to Filecoin eventually. But we're not going to wait for that. We're just going to jump. So we've copied that CID. We're going to jump straight back to our example. Oops, over here. And lo and behold, it's the same data that I've done in the past. So here's the IPFS hash again. And I'm going to take that hash. I'm going to use it in my smart contracts or my NFTs assets. I'm also going to base 64 encode this and use that as a hash in the contract. I'm not sure this is like sort of the best practices, but we're going to do it anyway because it works. So there we go. If that's just a command line tool to calculate the base 64 encoding of that string. And so we're going to use this when we actually mint our NFT. Cool. So that's actually, we're ready to go. We've uploaded the assets to IPFS and Filecoin. Now I'm going to just copy and paste this line of code here. It's really long. And oh shoot, there we go. All right, and I'm going to copy paste this in here, and I'm going to talk about it here in a second. Oops, I did not want those extra dashes. Okay, here we go. So I'm using near to call the contract, the dev contract that we deployed, and I'm going to get it to call the NFT_mint method. And this is the data basically as JSON that I'm going to send it. So I'm creating this new token with token ID 0, first token. The receiver that's going to get it is the contract. And here's all of the metadata that I want to include in the NFT. And this is sort of like standards-based or spec-based metadata for NFTs on Near. So it's got a title is awesome. It's got a description, which is the best GIF ever. And then it's got some media. Now, in my case, I'm actually for the media link, I'm going to use the IPFS gateway URL to this CID. And while I'm talking, a question about metadata is pretty much exactly the same as the ERC 721s. Yes. Yes. In fact, it even has a sort of like, you can have you can have references to metadata and things as well. So it's very much the same. Yes. Right, so I'm going to include that media link as a gateway URL. I'm going to create one copy of this, and then I'm going to include this media, the hash of the actual content. So in theory, you could say the gateways are down, you could decode this hash and just request the CID over like IPFS BitSwap, or you could request it from the bridge system and eventually get it back from Filecoin, assuming it's made its way to Filecoin by now. Anyway, I'm going to call this method using my NFT smart contract, and I'm going to include a deposit of 10 Near to do the minting. 10 Near is not a lot, so that's pretty cheap. Plus, we're on testnet, so it's all good. So here I am. I'm going to mint this NFT, and live before your eyes, there we go. The testnet universe has allowed me to proceed. And so here it spits me back the metadata for my thing. I left a lot of things blank just for the purposes of this demo, but we've got awesome, best GIF ever, the media and the hash for that thing. So that's super cool. Now, what I want to do is I could actually, I'm going to actually transfer this NFT. I'm going to like sell it to another account. So I'm going to sell it to an account I created this morning that has no NFTs in it yet, called, what did I call it? I actually called it, I think I called it Awesome NFT, NFT-Awesome. Okay, so that's the one I'm going to use. So let's just change this to NFT Awesome. Oh, I can't update that. I'll just do it on the CLI instead. Okay, so I'm going to change this to NFT awesome. This is a brand new account that I haven't done anything with. And I'm going to check, do they own any NFTs from this account? No, they do not. Cool. All right, great. That's too bad. They're going to want one of these sweet NFTs, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer to them our NFT. Copy that. Paste it here. Ah, that's annoying. Okay, so we're going to call the contract. We're going to call NFT transfer. We're going to transfer the token with ID 0 to a new receiver, which is NFT awesome.testnet with the memo transfer ownership. And I'm using this account ID I'm using the contract itself to transfer it. And I'm giving a teeny tiny deposit of, I think it's about 1 octoneer. So if I hit enter there, here we go. The owner of NFT-awesome is going to be so excited because they're about to get one of the best NFT drops ever. And so that's pretty much it. We've done it now. I'm going to click over to here and just refresh. So this is just the basic like wallet view thing that comes with Near. It's just wallet.testnet.near.org. And this is NFT.awesome. I'm already logged in here. And if I click on my collectibles tab, boom, there is my sweet, awesome NFT with the IPFS asset here ready to go. And that is on its way to Filecoin. And now the cool thing here is I now have an NFT that is actually going to be provably stored on Filecoin for the next year. It's not going to disappear. I'm not going to get kicked off. I'm never going to be able to lose that because that NFT is stored provably cryptographically secure on Filecoin. That's important. Now I said, we're preserving humanity's data for the future. Maybe that, maybe there are some more important things than this awesome gift, but hey, we got to start somewhere. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that little demo. Feel free to play around with this and do that yourself. Near is a super fun blockchain to play around with, so I recommend you check that out. I'm almost done, and I think our time is just about perfect. So if you're at all interested in sort of like getting your hands a little bit more dirty with any of this stuff, I recommend you check it out. Here are a couple of examples where if you're working, you want to like write a dApp on Ethereum or Polygon, or you want to write a dApp on Near, check these sites out. They've got all of the like docs and things like that you can interface with to do that. Here's another link to that storage demo app. Feel free to play around with that. By the way, if you go on there and you don't have a Near wallet, you can create one on the fly, super easy on testnet. It's so ridiculously easy, no MetaMask, no nothing. You just click like create new account and you can do it. So that's pretty fun. Yeah, you can start playing around with that. I did want to highlight that I did all that stuff and it was totally free. It didn't cost me anything to store data on Filecoin. And that's thanks to support from the Filecoin team, from the Polygon team, from the Near protocols, and from Textile. So you're welcome. Yeah, it's free for this foreseeable future. So, you should start playing around with it. See if you can break it. Here's some code that you can check out. Again, I'll make these slides available if anyone is interested. And I can go through this if there are specific questions about that. And here's how you do it on Near. And I'm going to stop on this slide because thank you for participating with me. That was a lot of fun. You can check us out on Twitter, ask us questions via email. Probably the best place to get in touch with us sort of for real-time stuff is this. And then there's our jobs board there, and we are always hiring. There's a question here. Well, first, Trudy Duty says super cool, and yes, Trudy Duty, it is super cool. And then Joey says, are there any grant programs available? And the answer to that one is yes, there are grant programs available. In addition to a bunch of the awesome Filecoin grants that are out there, Textile also has a couple of grants if you're interested in leveraging auctions for your backend system. We've got like grants ready to go for that. we will be doing a bunch of hackathons and stuff now and forever, pretty much, that you can win prizes if you use bridges to build a Ethereum DApp. ETH Online is going on right now. I don't know if it's too late to sign up for that. And we've got grants available, so get in touch. Yeah, not easy if you're not a coder. That's true. I think that's true, and we're still in that sort of like level of development in the blockchain space in general. Having said that, there are tools to do a lot of the NFT minting and stuff using zero code setups. And then, as you saw, like using the bridge doesn't really require code per se. So, I think, you're not wrong, but don't let that scare you away. There's a lot of cool things you can still do. Is there any limits on file size and storage? No, not right now, not while it's free. So check it out. And it looks like there's a bunch of cool, I did grab the Discord invite, so I'll try to hang around there for a bit afterwards. And if you have any questions or whatever, we can hang out there. And yeah, thanks for attending. It looks like a great turnout, so thanks a lot. Join the Slack, yeah.
Awesome, Carson, thank you very much. Much appreciated, great presentation. And for everyone that wants to listen back, the slides and the video will go up on the Medium and the YouTube and the usual places on the website tomorrow morning, I should think. If anyone has any questions, yeah, Prashant, yeah, slides will go up tomorrow. Any question? Did we answer one? Are there any limits on file storage and size? Did we answer that?
The answer right now is there are no limits. The only limit is yourself.
Only limit is yourself. Very good indeed. Let me repost. So everyone, for staying up to date, do you want to, the Slack link is there. Fantastic. I repaste the 4 links. Our Discord is there. The Filecoin Club overview and with all the events, the website is there. Eventbrite for next week, we have an event on mining, and then we will announce the hackathon, the Encode Filecoin NFT hack, which will be happening. And then, yeah, we hope you join us for next week. But in the meantime, thank you very, very much, Carson, for the talk this morning. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to join the Textile Slack and ask more. Well, it's been a great session. I will see you all next week, hopefully. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you again, Carson.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.